Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear sisters, and the message reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? Can you please post my own story as hidden identity? I carry my dead son everywhere that I go to. I think that I am slowly losing my marbles, going mad very slowly but surely. I am with my dead son everywhere that I go to. I carry him everywhere, even when I am working. What saddens me the most is that I am responsible for his death. Yes, I was cruel, I know, and I regret that very decision that I took each and every day of my life. I am haunted in my sleep. I dream of him crying and staring at me each and every day. My love for money has been my downfall. I came to South Africa looking for better working opportunities, but work was nowhere to be found. Besides, I did not have the right paperwork to be formally employed. Yes, I know that there is this thing that they say that foreigners are taking jobs that belongs to South Africans, but the truth of the matter is that when you do not have the right paperwork, you will never get any formal employment. You only work as a gardener, as a farm worker. So I decided to use the talent that I had whilst growing up. I was a good hairdresser. Even right now, I am still a very good hairdresser. Business was neither here or there. We were just making the bare minimum living from hand to mouth. I must be doing something not right, I thought to myself. So I said, let me just join women's empowerment groups. Maybe there was something that I was missing, or maybe something that I was not doing right. So I joined the business groups where women in business held seminars, and some were group buying from countries like Turkey and China to lessen the overhead expenses. So I liked what I was hearing in the groups, and I decided to stay a little bit longer in the groups to learn a thing or two. Normally, I am not a groupie, but I thought what the women were saying made some sense. So I decided to hang in just a little bit. Well, there was this other woman, let me call her Jennifer. Jennifer came to my inbox when I had introduced myself as a hairdresser, and she had told me that a hairdresser had relocated to greener pastures, so she was looking for a long-term new hairdresser. I did her hair, and she was very happy with my work, and that is how she started to recommend me to other rich aunties so that I can get to do their hair as well. That's how Jennifer hooked me to her tribe of rich aunties. Oh yes, this is what they call themselves, the tribe of rich aunties. I developed a personal relationship with the tribe, and sometimes would be invited to do their hair at their own private spaces, i.e. in their homes. The rich aunts lived a very lavish lifestyle. Their hands were always well oiled. They paid handsomely, and when the year ended, they invited me to their end of year party. Yet I known what was going to happen at that party. In the future, I would not have hanged around these rich aunties. Neither would I have done their hair either. So while at the party, Jennifer had shown a keen interest in my business, asking if I was making money. I told her things were tough. The economy was tough. It was just making the bare minimum. She jokingly said I would swim in money just like they were doing. I just had to make a hard decision. The party ended and Jennifer left with more questions than answers. The following week, Jennifer came to see me and asked if I was serious about turning my life around. I said yes, because poverty was making me to look like I was old. I was always stressed about the unpaid bills, and she would take me to someone who would bless me. We went to the blesser, who gave me a screwdriver and some powder that I had to put underneath the pillow for 7 consecutive days. I did not think much of it, and at that time I kept on asking myself, what is it that I was doing? But when you come from a country that is very far away, when you can't even raise the money that is needed for the flight tickets to return back to your country, because I come from Ghana, so there was no way that I was just going to wake up and tell myself that I am going to return back to my country with what? I had to make something out of my life, even if it meant to prostitute myself. I had reached that point in my life that it is far much better to at least prostitute myself so that back home I can buy a piece of land. That was all that I was fighting for. And what pains me the most is that I grew up in the Seventh-day Church, and growing up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I was someone that had been given good discipline. I knew that there were things that we were not supposed to do, but when I came to South Africa because of poverty, I decided to throw away my faith. And because of the guilty feeling that I always had, I ended up going to this other church that I knew very well that this church, it was not a church that was speaking about the gospel of Jesus Christ, but it was all about prosperity gospel. And the thing that I discovered about these churches is that they do not make you to feel very guilty. When I went to that church, because of my good body structure, there was one man who was married. That man approached me after church, and I started dating him until people knew about our relationship. But the good thing about this prosperity gospel church, they do not make you to feel guilty. Even if they know that you are a sinner, they'll keep on inviting you back to church. I was quickly given a position. So with the position that I was given in church, I also wanted to buy the most expensive clothes to go out with the women when they'll be going out on their vacations. So this is the reason as to why I told myself that I also needed to become rich for the sake of my son back home, for the sake of my mother that I had left back home. I just wanted to be up there enjoying life. So after I had been given these items to perform the rituals on the seventh day, when I woke up to prepare breakfast, then I wondered as to why my mom had not called me, because each and every morning before I would have woken up, my mom would always send me a picture of my son. But on that day when I woke up, I then found out that my mom did not even send me a picture, and she had not even woken me up to say good morning. So I thought that maybe there was something that was going on. So I said, let me just go to work. Later on, then I am going to communicate with my mother. The moment that I got into town walking to the hair salon, that was when I received a message from my mom. My mom told me that my son was not feeling okay, and they had rushed my son to the hospital, and there was a lot of money that was needed. I said, how much? She then told me that the money that was needed, at least it was equivalent to 15,000 rands, so that my son can be treated well at the hospital. I started to cry. I looked for a place to sit down, and I just sat down there, not knowing what to do. And then I called my friend, and I begged her to speak with some of the rich aunties to at least borrow me some money. And I was then taken to this house that belonged to this other rich auntie, and I was told that yes, money, Brother Nashi, I was going to be given. I was going to be given money to buy a flight ticket returning to Ghana and coming back to South Africa, and a whole lot of stuff was going to be sorted out for me. And the next time that I was going to return back, I will be returning back with proper documentation, because all that I had to do was to go back home, do some courses, and reapply for a visa. Then with the money that the rich aunties had, they were going to try to get me back. And one of the aunties even started a hair salon simply because she wanted me back in the country. So when they told me all of these things, I was really excited, and I said, God, you are truly wonderful. Just after I had celebrated, then my friend took me to the side, and she told me that the thing that I had said of praising God in front of the rich aunties, they didn't enjoy it and they didn't like it. I should never mention the name of the Lord when I am around these rich aunties. I said, so what do they want me to do? I was told that the only reason as to why I was returning back to my own country was to bury my son. When I was told that the only reason as to why I was returning back to Ghana was to bury my own son, I felt like collapsing. My friend then said, what did you expect? You think that these women are going to give you all of this money for nothing? You must be joking, or maybe you must be sick in your mind. You think that people will just go around helping total strangers. You have to sacrifice something in order for you to get something. Then I was given some space and some time to think. I was only given about 30 minutes to think this thing over. Then after that, I returned back to my friend and I told her that indeed I was willing to sacrifice my own son. I was told that I had to prepare immediately because one of the rich aunties were going to do an emergency booking for my flight tickets, and the very next morning I was on my way to OR Tambo, ready to fly back to Ghana. When I arrived in my country, that was when reality set in of the things that I had done. My mom then went with me to the hospital where my son was. My son, when I looked at him, was cold as ice. My intestines started turning in my tummy. I said, what had happened to my son? Because all that I knew was that my son was really active. He was hyperactive. I said, what type of a disease is this? So that night we went to bed. We slept at that hospital. Then the next morning, that was when I saw that my son had a very small pimple on his neck. So this small pimple, after I had showed this pimple to the nurses, then later on in the afternoon, the nurse, I saw them rushing with my son because there was an emergency surgery that was supposed to be performed on my son. They made me to sign the documents, and after I had signed the documents, my son was taken into theater, but my son never recovered. My son, when he died, he had actually a small hole that went into his neck, all through his neck. The piercing was too small to be that of a knife. It was like that, something like a drill, my brother. That was when I started to think about that screwdriver, the one that I had placed underneath my pillow. So this is what had killed my son, Brother Nashi. That is how I sacrificed my own son. After I had buried my son, I was then told that the clothes that I had traveled from South Africa wearing, going with them to Ghana, since these women had told me that when I arrived in Ghana, I was not supposed to bath myself that same day, and I was supposed to keep on wearing the same clothes until I would have received the news of my son's passing away. So I kept on wearing those same clothes without actually washing myself. I would only wipe my armpits and my private parts wet towel so that I won't smell. After that, then the instructions came to me, and I was told that I was supposed to leave all of those clothes on top of my son's grave. So I went one night to my son's grave after we had buried him. Then what I did was that I started to bath myself, standing right next to my son's grave, and I was told not to shed a tear. I told my son that I wanted him to follow me back to South Africa, and after following me back to South Africa, he was the one who was going to make me to become the richest woman in South Africa. And after I had finished bathing, I then urinated on his grave, and I left my clothes on top of my son's grave. When I came back to South Africa, even when I was at the airport, I kept on speaking with my son's spirit. I kept on whispering, and I said, we are about to board the plane to return back to South Africa. You have never been to South Africa. It was always your wish, but today, my son, I am going to grant you your wish. You are going to see South Africa today. When we landed at OR, I then told my son that this is the land of South Africa. This is where you always wanted to come to see what South Africa looked like. So we arrived here in South Africa. I was then given 2 rings, one that I wear on my left hand and the other one on my right hand, and 2 bracelets. This is part of my story. I hope that if I get time, I will tell you all the other things that I have done throughout the years that I have spent here in South Africa. Dear listeners, right, there was a message that was sent to me by one of our admins. Strange things do happen in this world.